I have given you all authority to take out the enemy. You are to conquer and subdue him. Satan has no reign and no rule and no authority within people's lives. God, you search my heart and thoughts. Make sure that I am lined up in your word, Lord. Nothing can come in and hinder what God wants to do. We're right, we're armed, we're dangerous, we're ready to go in. We have keys to bring massive amounts of people into the kingdom of God.
Hi, I'm Angela Greenick. I want to welcome you to the War Room today. I am super excited. Listen, every day that I have breath is another exciting day because the devil's a liar and he's never going to steal whatever God has ordained for us. I am really excited today. I have Derrick Gates on with me, whom I met in July of last year in Texas at Pastor Pam Neely's church. And I got to do a very small clip for a movie that you made.
I was born and raised in violence. I came to love living by the gun and the doorstep of death, until one day, death came for me. I'd won most battles that I fought, but as I stared back into my own face in the emergency room, I knew that I'd lost the war. And as death came for me, Jesus walked into the room, and the strong hand of God's mercy triumphed over his judgment, and he chose to breathe life into my dead bones, resurrecting me to serve him. Why did God choose to raise a man like me? To go from gunning people down to now raising people up? To have raised 4 people from death? But why? Why me? Why us? Almost 2 decades since that old man was crucified, I still have questions. So I set off across the nation, searching for answers that I desperately need. Does God still raise the dead? And if he does, why does he choose to use us to do it?
So I want you to share what God is downloading right now. Especially the movie could not be coming out at a more important time. I feel that prophetically, because people are like, what are we going to do because of the virus if we die? I said, you die, just bring yourself back because you can. Come on.
Right.
This is not complicated. If that was the case, I wouldn't have been chosen. I don't think you would have been either.
Right, for sure. For sure. You say that was a small part, but honestly, like people that have watched the movie, they're like, we really like that. Who's that crazy lady? That crazy lady in the movie. She's our favorite. And people really, really love that. And you were literally like a 1159 edition,
Yeah.
We were done. We were actually completely done, and you were the last interview that we did. And I don't know why. I was just like, hey, let's try to get. She's here. Let's do an interview with her. And it ended up being people's favorite.
And then your camera broke, and we had to use mine.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, because I was like, don't worry about it. It's like 120 degrees. It's hot. It's hotter in hell, so let's get rid of it. But it was so hot. And I got you and Sean, the other guy that produced the movie and helped you with it. And I'm like dying, and I couldn't stop laughing because I'm like, Lord, if your people don't get about your glory, about the creative miracles, people are crying for miracles. I'm like, God, it's time for the creative miracle to be birthed. And Derrick, I feel like we're in a prophetic timeline. I can't seem to get away from Elijah. Every day, God says that mantle of Elijah has fallen. And it's for those that are willing to raise up and to pick it up, but to step into the destiny. And I see that God's got this whole different dynamic of prophetic timelines that he is calling for the true warrior to arise. Like, I want to know when people are going to start going into the occult camps. Like, I want to know when we're going to start shutting things down in the spirit realm against the enemy.
Right. Yeah. And I think we're in the timeline. I think you're right.
So.
You know, for far too long, people have continued to say things like everything was a futurist point of view. Mm-hmm. Like, someday God's going to do this. Someday we're going to see revival. Someday we're going to walk in this glory. Someday we're going to do these things.
Yeah.
And about 3 years ago, God began to say to me, quit saying we are going into this. We are here now.
Yeah.
And I don't know when I know you're on Elijah list a lot. I think it was about 2.5 years ago. God gave me a word about the wild ones rising up, and it went viral on Elijah list.
Of course,
because the Lord really spoke to me that he's changing the landscape. So we're in this reformation and this restructuring in the church, and obviously we see that everywhere right now, really. But about 3 years ago, I think God really, and you probably experienced it, because I think anybody who is really in tune prophetically knew something was coming. I don't think we saw what's happening right now necessarily, but we knew something was happening in the church, because it's going to take a new breed of people to advance the gospel in this time, because people are done. The church is done, and the general public are done with the suit and tie. They're done with the mega church. They're done with all these different aspects of what kind of we have made American church. And it's going to take, and now we are on that time where we have to be bold. It's going to be going into the occult. It's going to be going into, and by the way, like going into like the pride festivals, not with a whip, but going in and loving people.
Yeah.
You know, going in and showing the love of Christ, but with a boldness that, hey, we can see anybody change.
So, you know what? I like what you just said, because you have to step up and step out. And I think that people, Derrick, have a fear of that because they have a fear of failure. But you know, when you're with Christ, you're going to have days where you're on the mountain and the next day you're not. And you know, I've been with the LGBTQ for 8 years.
Right.
And I do Folsom Fair, but this year I was supposed to go to Germany and San Francisco, but because of the coronavirus, they've had to shut things down. But there is so much unrest. And I'm kind of sad sometimes, because I'm like, God, you have called the church to be superheroes, you know? And superheroes come together and we're united. We all have these different giftings, but it's supposed to be all for one and one for all. And I agree with you. The thing of the church, it's like we have more churches in bars and in the gay, lesbian, and transgender bars. Like, we just sit down and have church. Our people are in there every week up until the Corona time. But that's when they have church on Friday nights, Saturday nights, because you have to go and meet people where they are. You know, I say this all the time, but these are not the days of Elijah, because we are the Elijahs of our day.
Yeah.
His first act, if you will, is that he went and raised the dead. I mean, I know that he had a reproducing of the flour and the oil, and he goes to the gate of the city, which I believe, Derrick, is the church doors, and the gate of the city was broken. And I think that some of the areas of the ministries have a broken system. What do you think?
Yeah, the whole system in America, the whole Western church structure is shattered.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's all the Western church model, which would include the European church, that whole model is all about what can I get. So you got hundreds of people that just go to church, and it's all about what I can get. And the church was never supposed to be about what I can get. It's always supposed to be about what can I give. And that doesn't mean to the pastor. That doesn't mean lift this person, elevate this person up. It's what can I take from this equipping moment in the church, in the building, or in the meeting, and every single person become that superhero you're talking about, and hit the streets with it, the bus stop, the gas station, the grocery store, the bar, wherever God sends you. You know, we are the Elijahs in this generation. and we've been called to call down fire upon the earth. You know,
Baals out there, which are in
absolutely
the pulpits. I want to throw that in for free.
Yeah.
But it's in the pulpits, that Baal mindset. And, you know, King Ahab, he was supposed to be for God. And then he ends up marrying Jezebel. And then Baal is so entered in. And I'm like, God, we got to stay as pure breeds. And I loved what you said. The wild ones are riding.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the Pony Express. The Lord said they've been riding for months now. And it's almost like Paul Revere, they're getting ready to hand something, you know, out of the bag with instructions. And I believe God's giving instruction right now to those that have the ear to the ground and know that the war is here, but war is coming in a greater increase. I wanted to have a program today because Saturday was the summer solstice. It is the highest satanic time of the year. People go, why? I go, because the veil between our world and theirs is at its thinnest. People don't even understand when you prophetically or in the natural say things scientific. They still don't kind of get it. But the Lord keeps telling me in this timeline, I mean, I haven't slept for a couple of days because there is such an increase in the occult activity, because God says, because greater is the outpouring. You know, greater is going to be the outpouring of what we have been called to carry in this timeline. So I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. What was it that made you want to do this? It's a movie. People will call it a documentary, whatever. But what was it that made you just so compelled? I mean, you sold your house. You just went for it.
Well, the first thing that compelled me to do it was God said, do it.
There's an answer for some of you out there.
Right. I mean, and we had no idea what we were doing. I had no clue how to make a movie. I didn't even know how to work a camera at the time. I didn't know about lighting. I didn't know about sound. I didn't know how to edit. There was nothing that I knew. I had been I was a theater major in college, but this was so different from anything I'd ever done. Yeah. So that was the first thing. But I believe why it was such a compelling interest to me was the fact that I was raised from the dead. Mm-hmm. You know, some people know my story, some people don't. But the 10-second version was I was a international drug dealer. I trafficked weapons, drugs, and women around the world. Very violent, bloody lifestyle, and I died. And Jesus met me in the room. I said, if you save me, I'll serve you for the rest of my life. Amen. And he rose me from the dead. And as of now, we've raised 4 people from the dead.
Me too.
And I believe that's just a start. You know, I think we're going to see that it multiply and increase, you know, as his power and glory begins to increase in the earth as we, you know, I like how, what was it Reinhard Bonnke said? We're going to plunder hell and populate heaven.
Come on.
You know,
and that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. Do you think people don't believe they got the goods? I think sometimes people don't believe they got the shunk. Yeah. Like they got the goods, but it's like this holds them back, right?
Yeah, it's exactly it. It's a couple of things. So I think there's two major things keep people from doing things like raise the dead. And you can apply that to heal the sick. You can apply that to casting out devils, whatever it is, because it all kind of comes down to the same things, which are A, fear of man. Yes. They're afraid of what people are going to say. Mm-hmm. And then number 2 is they're afraid God's not going to back them up. I think those are the 2 main things. There's a lot of other aspects, you know, people just have doubt and they have, you know, I would say the other major thing is sonship issues, you know, as in they don't believe that their identity as a son or a daughter is really there. And so I think if we can get rid of those. So when I got rid of fear of man, like I don't give a rip what people think about me.
Me either.
You can either like me or you don't like me. I don't really care. I'm going to be who God made me to be. Yeah. If that means I'm praying in tongues, walking through Walmart, then look at me crazy. I don't care.
I know.
You know, if that means I'm casting out a devil in Walmart, which there's a lot of them.
Yep.
Then I don't care. You know, it just doesn't matter to me what people think. And when I got rid of that fear of man, things really changed. And the other thing is that when I know now that if I hear God say to do something, I know he's going to back me up, because he wouldn't tell me to do it if he wasn't going to back me up.
I like what you said because, I think sometimes like God gives us a simple instruction, but I think sometimes we put a roadblock in his way to make the instruction so unreachable. And God is telling us that we can reach anything. I feel like he's like double dog daring people to dream in these last few months. Like this virus hit, and God really spoke to me the first week, Derrick, and said, the virus now will be like an x-ray into the hearts of my sons and daughters. And it's going to bring exposure of fractures within their hearts. And the Lord said, but if people would open up their heart to me, he says, shafts of light would come in. Because in the absence of order, chaos erupts. In the absence of light, darkness will prevail. And if we do not be the voice of him who is prepared, we need to be preparing the way of the Lord and believe in God for the impossible. And, I was praying because many people know, because I just never care. I always tell people what's happening because it's like whatever. But I had 10 surgeries from February of last year to February of this year. I still have not recovered from them fully. But my mind is so like, bam, 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 it's like, don't mess with this. Trust me, devil. Don't. But the body's like, having to go through. And then in a couple of days, I have to have a full shoulder. And I said, my kids are like, Mom, you going to be okay? And I'm like, yeah. I said, it'll be titanium, my shoulder. I said, and I'll just be that bionic woman that I've always been. It's just going to have a little bit of a clear.
Like Terminator.
Well, yeah, because I'm like, Lord, I it wasn't that long ago, I did an interview with Steve Schultz that really, I got hundreds and hundreds of emails a day from people all over the world. And they were like, well, I don't know what to do. I said, first of all, you have to remember, like you're saying, God don't come from me. Like healing's not from us. It comes through us. Money doesn't come from us. It comes through us. Believing God for the impossible comes here and into the heart, but we let go and let him. Our backgrounds have a lot of similarity. And so that day, I remember you said I raised 4 from the dead. I go, me too, but I haven't counted them all, because of all my travels to Pakistan and different like crazy nations. And I was like, because I love what you said also, because you had to get to a place where that fear of man had to go.
Right.
And, I have recently found out, you're just going to love this, Derrick. You'll go, what? I was told I'm not mainstream. And I said, well, I had to call Larry, Derrick. I'm like, what the heck does that mean? And he goes, babe, mainstream means you don't fit into the box of other people. And I'm like, I'm not mainstream then. And at first I was like, when it was spoken to me from the ministry, media for being on major television, they go, we just love her, but she's not mainstream. And I thought, well, what does that mean in particular? Like, why would I want to be like everybody else? I'm called to be different. You're called to be different. And if we can't embrace who God's called and ordained for us to be, how do we expect others? We either got the goods or we don't. That's why I think it's easier when we go into stores and do things that people are getting healed, delivered, and set free. Because they're looking for help.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a sick world. And God has given us the medicine for it.
Yeah, that's real.
And too many times we want to hoard the medicine for ourselves. Yeah. We want to hoard all the glory and all the stuff of God. We just want to keep it to ourselves for whatever reason. Yeah. Then we want to complain about how sick the world is.
Yeah.
The answer came on a cross 2,000 years ago.
Remember that.
And, we, for whatever reason, we, as a whole, the body just wants the world to remain the world. We want the church to remain the church, when God has told us we're supposed to be advancing the kingdom. That means, I want to go into the dark places. Because the light that's within you and the light that's within me and my wife and whoever else is supposed to crowd out the darkness.
Always.
Which means we're supposed to take the land. We're supposed to populate the land and advance the kingdom.
Amen.
And if you only let your light shine in the place where the light already is, then it's not effective.
And I agree.
That's why I like to go to the places where nobody else will go. Some people call it reckless, and some people call it,
not mainstream.
Yeah, not mainstream for sure. And I just call it living kingdom.
Yeah.
You know, Skid Row needs Jesus. The Pride festivals need Jesus. And when I go to those type of places, and that's what I liked about you, when I found that out, I don't go to those places to judge people. I go to those places to love people.
Yeah.
I have so many, and I'm not, I probably don't want to get into the theological conversation about it, but I got a lot of, gay friends, and I love
them. And drag queens. I have so many drag queens that are #1 in the world. I don't know what to do. They're like, where's Mama Angela? They know I'm a pastor. They know I love God. But Derrick, my job is to go in and love.
It's to love them. It's to love them. And,
give a word I don't, healing, whatever.
Yeah. I don't endorse the behavior. I don't endorse the lifestyle. But I'm also called to love them and be there for them and treat them like Jesus would treat them.
Yeah, well, they're people.
They're people. They're human beings. You know what? You cut their arm open, they're going to bleed the same color that we do. They're exactly the same as we are. And, I absolutely, and for me, it's the same with any kind of person, no matter what situation they're in. Yeah. It started off not being mainstream for Nina and I when we chose prison ministry. We had a church in Kansas City for 10 years, and the first 2 years of it, we had approximately, I would say 75 of the 120 people in our church were bussed in from the prison every Sunday.
Amen.
And
I love prison ministry. It's the best. They ain't going nowhere. Let's get real.
And I've got people that came out of that group. They're still friends today. They're still doing well today. And they're brothers and sisters. I love it. Definitely not mainstream.
That's the best part. Like when I was really starting to step into myself about 15, 18 years ago, I went to the men's prison, which I do mostly every birthday. I go to the men's prison out here in Aberdeen. Pastor Joel Chukanawakiki, he's at a night. He's flipping awesome. And you have like 500-600 men. You start talking about spiritual warfare, man, they're like, we're in, because we were in such a war of the heaviness, the drugs, the alcohol. You're trying to fill all these voids, but only Christ. Some of the guys were like, they go, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm so glad that I got another year to go, because I'm learning about Jesus, and I'm learning that, I was trying to stuff all this stuff in my heart, and nothing's going to fill you or do you like Jesus, nothing. That's because that spirit of adoption is crying out. And if the world, Derrick, ever needed us, it's now. Like I said to my husband already, I go, Larry, because Folsom Fair is canceled, which is like 500,000 to 700,000 people in 3 days. Wow. And I can't go there every year, and I can't go to Germany. I said, well, I'm super excited because I'm going back to the witches' ball, and I'm going back into the occult shops, and I'm going back into where all the witches do their voodoo that they don't really do so well. And it's time. I mean, it's just time, I'm like, well, Jesus, that gives me a little bit more time now. Instead of dealing with all the nuns, because I do a nuns run where all the transgenders are, they call it a nuns run, but it's not nuns. But it's just a different dynamic, And I mean, God is like giving me such favor. I mean, I just came out in February. I just came out of Parliament in New Zealand, and I should have been in New Zealand's Australia, but because of the virus, everything had to shift. And I go, God, the dynamic of Folsom Fair, the occult. I'm in Parliament speaking, I mean, it's a big deal, and you're thinking in your head, and I go, God, you gave me governmental authority there. You gave me governmental authority here. So let's take a few minutes while we're going to be wrapping up, but I'd like you to share with me, like, I've never met some of the guys.
When healing first started in America, it was against, you couldn't heal the sick. All the healing revivalists of the 50s and stuff, they all went to jail at one time, Jack Coe and all those guys, and then it became acceptable. So it's like deliverance, one demon, okay. Mass deliverance, I'm not sure. They haven't seen mass deliverance a lot, or not a lot of deliverance in America. They see it on TV. I think they think people just get crazy and they'll ruin the service. But raising the dead is different, I think, because they've never seen it modeled at all in the Western world. They only hear about reports in Africa or some other country, third world country. Oh, okay, that's great, and the whole village got saved. Wonderful for them. But we're westernized. I think it's the Fear, number one, I think it's fear. They're scared of the unknown. Two, a lot of the leaders don't have faith to even attempt it. So how could they, in their mind, how could they be teaching it and tell people to believe for it? Of course, they're going to call their pastor and say, "Hey, pastor, pastors do funerals and weddings, right? So pastor, come raise my family from the dead." So there's a lot of pressure on the pastor or whoever to do it. So I think they just haven't seen it. But once it starts breaking open more and more and more, even as a result of what you're doing here, I think it's going to become commonplace where raising the dead will be just as common as healing the sick. Well, it goes back to what Jesus said. That one of the last things he said before he left, he said to wait for the Holy Spirit, but he said, go into all the world, preach the gospel, heal the sick, raise the dead. So Jesus said it. That was one of his last commands. So when someone dies, a good relative or a friend or a father dies, and he tells you one last thing, son, don't forget this. That's really important. So his last words for the entire church was to raise the dead. So I just go by what Jesus said. He said, raise the dead. He wouldn't tell us to do it if it wasn't possible, if we didn't have the power to do it or the faith to do it. I think we just have to start doing it. And maybe you'll start and they don't all get raised, but maybe the third one gets raised. And then you start having faith to raise the dead. Well, even the doctors will start to even prove that God did it. We had a meeting we did a few years ago, like 2-3 years ago, near Sedona in Cottonwood, and we were hosting the weekend. I was doing the first night. I had Brian Welch, the rock star, come to give his testimony, and we did evangelism and brought a lot of unsaved. But the first night was a miracle night, and then the next day was going to be the evangelism and all that. So I'm doing the service. The worship leader's worshiping. He's doing awesome. The presence of God's coming in. He drops dead. First night of this big weekend, I'm like, oh, great. This is not a good, I'm supposed to do a miracle service. How do I do a miracle service after the worship leader drops dead, who also happens to be one of the pastors of the church there that we were renting the church from. And so I was like, oh, man. So he's dead. I thought he just passed out first, like in the spirit. So everyone thought, oh, he's getting slain in the spirit. After a while, he's foaming at the mouth. His eyes are dilating. He's not slain in the spirit. So we just rushed, about 10 of us, just start praying for him and commanding him to, come back. And long story short, the paramedics came. They tried everything they could. They said when they walked in the room, they felt the presence of God. What happened was I kept the meeting going because I knew that someone was going to shut it down. Pastor, we know, would have probably shut it down, rightfully so. Hey, his co-pastor just dropped dead. And so I go, hey, keep the music going. Keep worshiping. So we keep worshiping. Everyone's in their seat worshiping God. 10 of us are on the stage trying to raise him from the dead. The paramedics come in. They feel the power of God. The police come in, tell us, get away from the body, they tell us. All right, so we step a few feet back. We're still praying for him. And they carried him out. Here's the summary of that is he died 4 times. Major heart attack. And the doctors, the cardiologist said it's a total miracle he's even alive. That he shouldn't be alive at all. So even the doctors confirming. Normally doctors would say, yeah, it's our expertise and he came in fast enough and we caught it. It wasn't. They said he shouldn't be alive. There's no way he should be alive for the level of heart attack he had. So, I mean, and that's in America. So these things are starting to happen more and more in the Western world, not just in Africa or in some third world country.